I saw his hand slipping under my wife's panties. The sight froze my heart mid-beat, a surreal, choking grip settling on my chest. The dim light from the lamp on the bedside table bathed the scene in a muted glow, making every sordid detail starkly vivid. They hadn't even noticed me standing in the shadowed doorway. I stood up from the armchair across the room where I'd been nursing my suspicions, and the leather creaked louder than I intended. It was enough to snap their attention to me. Her gasp was sharp, panicked, a wounded animal caught mid-act. His hand jerked away as if touching her burned him now that I was there. I wanted to speak, to shout, to demand an explanation, but my throat was dry, the words dying unformed. She scrambled to pull her dress down, cheeks flushed with something that wasn't entirely shame. He, a younger man, blonde-haired, with a cocksure grin that faltered only slightly under the weight of my stare, had the audacity to look defiant. He didn't even bother fixing his shirt, unbuttoned halfway down, his chest still heaving. "Mark," she started, her voice trembling, but I cut her off with a raised hand. "Don't," I said. The single syllable landed heavy in the tense, suffocating silence. The room reeked of betrayal, perfume, sweat, and the unspoken admission that this was not the first time. My mind raced, replaying the small moments over the past few months. The sudden late nights, the guarded phone calls, her renewed interest in her appearance. It was all so glaringly obvious now, and I hated myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting her. I turned my gaze to him. "Get out." He hesitated, glancing at her as if for permission, which infuriated me even more. This boy thought he had rights here in my home, with my wife. I stepped forward, my fists clenched so tightly my knuckles ached, and he finally scrambled for his shoes, muttering something that might have been an apology or a curse. I didn't care. He brushed past me, his shoulder grazing mine as he made his escape, and the door slammed shut behind him, leaving the two of us alone. Her breathing was erratic, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her dress. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "How long?" My voice was low, controlled, but barely. "Mark, please, How long?" Her shoulders sagged under the weight of the question. "A few months," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "A few months," I repeated, tasting the words, feeling the bitterness of them coat my tongue. "And you thought I wouldn't notice? Did you even care if I did?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't sure if they were for me or herself. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said. "It didn't mean—" "Don't you dare say it didn't mean anything," I shouted, my composure fracturing. My voice echoed in the room, bouncing off the walls, making her flinch. She cried then, openly, her sobs filling the space where my anger had just been. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Years of habit, of love and commitment. But the larger part of me recoiled. How could I touch her, knowing where those hands had been? How could I believe anything she said now? "I was lonely," she said finally, her voice raw. "You're always working. You're always tired. I needed to feel wanted." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Wanted," I repeated. "You're blaming this on me? On my job?" "No, She broke off, covering her face with her hands. "It's not your fault. I messed up. I made a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or losing your keys. This," I said, gesturing to the space where her lover had just been, "is a choice. Repeated choices." Her silence was deafening. I ran a hand through my hair, pacing the room, trying to think, to breathe. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was him. His hands on her, his lips. God, I couldn't even finish the thought without wanting to tear something apart. "What now?" she asked, her voice trembling. The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. I could leave. I could throw her out. I could forgive her, but the thought made my stomach churn. Instead, I walked to the closet and pulled out my overnight bag. "What are you doing?" she asked, panic creeping into her tone. "I need space," I said simply, shoving a few essentials into the bag. "Don't call me. Don't text me. I need to think. Mark, please." But I didn't look back. I couldn't. I slammed the door behind me, leaving her sobs echoing in the home we'd built together, now fractured beyond repair. As I drove through the silent streets, the weight of betrayal seared through my veins, transforming grief into something sharper. Anger. It pulsed in my head, stronger with every passing second. until I realized I wasn't driving aimlessly. I was heading toward him. The cocky bastard. He'd been in my home, on my bed, touching her while knowing I existed. The image played over and over in my head, stoking the fury until it felt unbearable. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel as I envisioned his smirk, his arrogance. He needed to pay. It wasn't hard to figure out where he lived. I remembered seeing the address on one of her text previews, a quick glance while she pretended not to notice. My memory filled in the gaps, and within 20 minutes, I was pulling up outside his apartment complex. The building was one of those cheap, modern places they slapped together to lure in 20-somethings who couldn't afford better. His car was parked outside, an obnoxiously flashy sports car with chrome wheels that screamed, "Insecurity." I parked across the street, engine still running, my pulse hammering like a war drum. I walked to the front door, the security lock conveniently propped open by a takeout menu wedged into the frame. Idiot. He didn't even lock his building. It made what I was about to do feel almost too easy. His apartment was on the 3rd floor. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, my footsteps eerily calm for the chaos raging inside me. When I reached his door, I didn't knock. I slammed my fist against it, over and over, until I heard shuffling on the other side. "Who the hell?" His voice cut off as he opened the door and saw me. The smirk returned, faint but undeniable. He leaned against the frame, feigning casual confidence. "You lost, old man?" I didn't answer. My fist shot forward, connecting with his jaw, before he could finish his smug little act. The force of the punch sent him stumbling back into his apartment, knocking over a chair as he went. "What the f—" he sputtered, blood dripping from his split lip. I didn't let him recover. I stepped inside, slamming the door shut behind me. The room was sparse, messy, a few empty beer bottles on the counter, a pile of laundry in the corner. None of it mattered. My focus was on him. "You think you can walk into my life," I growled, advancing on him, "into my house, into my bedroom, and just get away with it?" He scrambled to his feet, hands raised defensively. "Hey, man, look." I grabbed him by the collar, slamming him against the wall so hard the cheap drywall cracked behind him. "You don't get to talk," I hissed. "Not after what you did." He struggled, throwing a wild punch that glanced off my shoulder. It was enough to make me loosen my grip, and he used the moment to shove me back. "You're crazy," he shouted, darting toward the kitchen. I saw the glint of steel a moment too late. He'd grabbed a knife from the counter, holding it out in front of him with shaky hands. "Back off," he yelled, his voice cracking. I laughed, cold, humorless. "You think that's going to stop me?" I lunged forward, batting the knife aside with a burst of strength fueled by sheer adrenaline. The blade nicked my forearm, but I didn't care. I drove my shoulder into him, slamming him into the counter. The knife clattered to the floor as he cried out in pain. "You think you're some kind of big man?" I snarled, pinning him down. "Sleeping with another man's wife? Do you even care about the destruction you cause?" "Please," he gasped, his cockiness replaced by genuine fear. I didn't think—" "That's your problem," I spat. "You don't think." I let him drop to the floor, watching as he curled up, clutching his ribs. I could have stopped there. Should have, maybe. But the anger wasn't done with me yet. I kicked over the pile of bottles, sending glass shattering across the floor. "This is what you deserve," I muttered, grabbing his phone off the counter. I scrolled through it until I found her name. Her texts. Their photos. Rage boiled over. I hurled the phone against the wall, shattering it into useless fragments. He flinched, his hand raised as if to shield himself from my fury. "This isn't over," I said, my voice low, deadly. "You'll pay for this. Both of you." I turned and walked out, leaving him broken and bleeding on the floor. Back in the car, my thoughts shifted to her. She thought I'd just leave? That I'd let this slide? I wasn't going to let either of them off so easily. I had plans to make. As I drove away from his apartment, the image of his bloodied face in the dim light filled me with a grim satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. He was just a symptom of the larger disease, the betrayal that had started with her. She had brought this into our lives. She had shattered everything. And she couldn't just sit there, crying in the house we built together, expecting me to forgive or forget. If she thought she was going to walk away unscathed, She was about to learn just how wrong she was. By the time I got home, my mind was a storm of plans. Calculated, cruel plans that would ensure she felt every ounce of the pain she had inflicted on me. The house was quiet when I walked in. The lights were off, save for the dim glow of a single lamp in the living room. She was sitting on the couch, her head in her hands, her phone beside her, no doubt waiting for him to call and tell her about our little encounter. She looked up when I entered, her eyes swollen from crying. "Mark," she started, her voice shaking. I I didn't know if you'd come back." I said nothing, just walked past her to the kitchen. She followed, hesitant, her bare feet patting softly against the floor. "Where did you go?" she asked, her voice small. "Did you see him?" I grabbed a glass from the cupboard, filling it with water, letting her words hang in the air like the stench of her betrayal. Finally, I turned to face her, leaning against the counter, the glass in my hand. "I saw him," I said flatly. "He won't be forgetting it any time soon." Her face paled. What, what do you mean? What did you do?" I took a slow sip of water, letting the silence stretch until she was squirming under my gaze. "Don't worry," I said, my voice cold. "He's alive, for now." Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but no words came. Good. Let her choke on her guilt. "You've humiliated me," I continued, setting the glass down. "You've lied to me, betrayed me, in my home. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" "Mark, Stop," I snapped, cutting her off. "I don't want your excuses. I want your honesty. Why him? Was it about the sex, the attention? Or were you just looking for a way out?" Her eyes brimmed with tears again, but I didn't care. "It wasn't about you," she whispered. "I was lost. I wasn't thinking. It was a mistake." "You don't get to call it a mistake," I roared, slamming my fist on the counter. She jumped, the sound echoing in the quiet house. "You made a choice, repeatedly. And now, you're going to live with the fallout." She stared at me, her lip trembling as I pulled out my phone. I'd prepared for this moment. Screenshots of her texts, photos I'd found in the cloud that she didn't realize were shared with me. Even a copy of the bank statement showing the hotel charges. I turned the screen toward her, watching as the color drained from her face. "This," I said, "is what I'm sending to everyone we know. Your parents, your sister, your coworkers. Do you think they'll see this as just a mistake?" Her hand shot out, trying to grab the phone, but I stepped back, keeping it out of reach. "Please, Mark," she begged. "You don't have to do this." "Oh, but I do," I said, a cruel smile tugging at my lips. "You took everything from me. My trust, my pride, my peace. Now I'm taking everything from you." I hit send. She let out a strangled cry. Sinking to the floor, she realized what I'd done. Her sobs filled the room, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. "Next," I said, my voice steady, "is the divorce. You're going to sign the papers. No arguments, no alimony, no house, nothing. You'll walk away with the clothes on your back and the shame you've earned." Her sobs grew louder, but I continued, unrelenting. "And don't think for a second that lover boy is going to be there to catch you. He's already blocked your number." Her head shot up, her tear-streaked face filled with disbelief. "You're lying." I held up her phone, which I'd taken from the couch when I came in. I opened her messages and showed her the screen. "This number has been blocked." "I made sure of it," I said. "He's not going to ruin his life for you. You're just a fling to him, a meaningless distraction." She collapsed back onto the floor, her sobs turning into quiet, broken murmurs. "Please, don't do this. I'll do anything." I crouched down to her level, staring into her tear-filled eyes. "Anything?" I asked, my voice a venomous whisper. She nodded, desperate. "Yes, anything." I leaned closer, my smile sharp and unforgiving. "Then disappear. Leave this house. Leave this town. And never show your face to me again." She didn't answer, but the hollow look in her eyes told me she understood. She'd destroyed us. And now, I'd destroyed her. The fire of vengeance didn't burn out after I watched her leave, dragging her suitcase down the driveway at dawn. It simmered, dark and malevolent, feeding on everything she had stolen from me. Her tears weren't enough. Her exile wasn't enough. If she thought escaping would absolve her of the fallout, she was wrong. There were others who needed to feel the weight of her betrayal. Her family, the people who had always stood on their pedestal, preaching loyalty and righteousness. They needed to see her for who she really was, and I would make sure of it. Her parents lived in a sprawling colonial on the other side of town, the kind of place that screamed old money, where appearances mattered more than substance. They'd always looked down on me, the blue-collar son-in-law who wasn't good enough for their perfect little daughter. But tonight, their perfect image was going to shatter. I parked across the street, the envelope heavy in my hand. Inside were the prints, the hotel receipts, her messages to him, the photos she'd sent him. Explicit, degrading, enough to obliterate any illusions they had about their darling girl. I approached the house, the gravel crunching under my boots loud in the stillness. No one stirred inside, and the windows were dark. Perfect. I slid the envelope through the mail slot, hearing it thud onto the polished floor beyond. It was only a matter of time before they saw everything. But that wasn't enough. No, I needed to deliver this one personally. The next evening, I waited. The dinner party was a monthly tradition, a chance for her parents to parade their social status to friends and neighbors. Tonight, I would make sure the show was unforgettable. I arrived just as the guests were gathering. The house was brightly lit, laughter and clinking glasses spilling out into the crisp night air. I straightened my tie, checked the folder under my arm, and walked up the driveway with purpose. No one stopped me as I entered. Why would they? I was family, after all. Her mother was the first to spot me. "Mark," she said, her surprise poorly disguised behind a forced smile. "We weren't expecting you." "That makes two of us," I replied, my tone cool. "But I think it's time we all had a little chat." She frowned, glancing nervously at the guests. "Now isn't really the time. Perhaps you could come by tomorrow." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time," I said, my voice rising enough to catch the attention of everyone nearby. The room quieted, heads turning toward me. Her father stepped forward, his expression darkening. "What's the meaning of this, Mark?" he demanded. I opened the folder, pulling out the photos and texts, holding them up for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the images came into focus. "This," I said, my voice steady and loud, "is what your daughter has been doing behind my back. While I was working to build a life for her, this is how she repaid me." Her mother's face went pale, her hand flying to her mouth. Her father snatched the photos from my hand, his expression turning from confusion to horror. The crowd murmured, a mixture of shock and awkward curiosity. "I trusted her," I continued, letting the bitterness seep into my voice. "I gave her everything, and she spat on it. On me, on us. And you raised her to think this was acceptable." "That's enough," her father growled, his face red with fury. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said, stepping closer to him. "I'm embarrassing you. You've spent your whole life pretending your family is perfect. Well, here's the truth, laid bare for everyone to see." Her mother broke down, sobbing into her hands, while her father stood there, seething. The guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering to each other, others openly staring at the spectacle. "I hope you're proud," I said, my voice dripping with venom, "because this is your legacy." With that, I turned and walked out, leaving them to pick up the pieces, but I wasn't done. Her younger sister, Amanda, had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She was engaged to some up-and-coming lawyer, the kind of guy who valued reputation above all else, the kind of guy who would be very interested to know what sort of family he was marrying into. It took me less than a day to find his office downtown. I showed up unannounced, a manila envelope in hand, and asked to see him. When he walked into the room, his polished smile faltered as he took me in. "Mark," he said cautiously, extending a hand, "I've heard a lot about you." "Likewise," I said, shaking his hand firmly. "I thought it was time we had a little chat." His confusion turned to unease as I slid the envelope across the desk. "What's this?" "Your fiancé's family skeletons," I said simply. "Consider it a wedding gift." He opened the envelope, his expression darkening as he read through the documents inside. This can't be real." "Oh, it's real," I assured him. "And if you marry into that family, it'll be your reality. Trust me." He looked up at me, his face pale. "Why are you telling me this?" Because you deserve to know, I said, standing up. And because some people need to learn that actions have consequences. As I left his office, a grim smile spread across my face. The dominoes were falling one by one, and I wasn't stopping till the whole damn structure came crashing down. The fallout was as spectacular as I had hoped. Her family, her reputation, everything she held dear, it was all crumbling under the weight of her betrayal and my vengeance. But the final move? That required precision. A masterstroke to leave her standing in the ruins of everything she had built. I'd kept tabs on her since she left the house. It wasn't difficult. People like her have patterns, routines, and weaknesses. She'd taken refuge in a dingy apartment in a cheaper part of town. No job, no support system, no prospects. She'd tried to reach out to friends, but most of them had cut ties after seeing the chaos I'd unleashed. Even her family wasn't speaking to her. But that wasn't enough for me. Not yet. It was late when I approached her building, the city lights casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. I knew she was home. Her car, a beat-up sedan she must have bought secondhand, was parked outside. The flicker of light in her window told me she was awake. Perfect. I knocked on her door. 3 sharp raps that echoed in the silent hallway. For a moment, there was no sound, and I thought she might ignore it. But then I heard shuffling inside, followed by the hesitant creak of the door, opening a crack. Her face appeared pale and hollow-eyed, a ghost of the woman I'd once known. "Mark," she whispered, her voice laced with fear and confusion. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk," I said evenly, my expression unreadable. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, her eyes darting down the hallway as if expecting someone to intervene. Finally, she stepped back, opening the door fully. The apartment was as pathetic as I'd imagined. Bare walls, secondhand furniture, and the faint smell of mildew. She gestured to the couch, but I didn't sit. Instead, I stood in the center of the room, looming over her as she perched nervously on the edge of a worn armchair. "What do you want?" she asked, wringing her hands. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, tossing it onto the coffee table in front of her. She stared at it for a moment before picking it up, her hands trembling. Her eyes widened as she read the document. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's a confession," I said calmly, detailing everything, the affair, the lies, how you used me, manipulated me, how you squandered the trust I gave you. She looked up at me, her face a mask of disbelief. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," I replied. "You're going to sign it, and then you're going to disappear." Her lips trembled. "Disappear? I already left. What more do you want from me?" "Everything," I said, my voice sharp. "You've taken everything from me, and now I'm returning the favor. This document will be sent to every potential employer you ever approach, every landlord you ever contact, anyone who might consider giving you a chance. You'll be unemployable, untrustworthy, a pariah." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You can't do this to me." I leaned closer, my voice a low growl. "You did this to yourself." She broke then, sobbing openly, her shoulders shaking as she crumpled the paper in her hands. For a moment, I felt nothing but contempt. But as I stood there, watching her unravel, a strange sense of closure began to settle over me. I had broken her, utterly and completely. "Sign it," I said, tossing a pen onto the table. She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face filled with despair. "And if I don't?" I smiled, cold and cruel. "Then I make sure everyone sees what's left of you. Every explicit photo, every dirty text. Your family, your friends, hell, even the neighbors in this godforsaken building. I'll make sure your disgrace is complete." Her hands shook as she picked up the pen. Slowly, haltingly, she signed her name at the bottom of the document. When she finished, she slumped back in the chair, defeated. "Good," I said, picking up the paper and folding it neatly. "You'll leave town tomorrow, and if I ever hear your name again, if I so much as see your shadow, I'll destroy whatever shred of a life you managed to rebuild. Do you understand?" She nodded, too broken to speak. I turned and walked to the door, pausing for a moment before leaving. "This could have gone differently," I said over my shoulder. "You had a choice, remember that." Then I walked out, leaving her sobs echoing behind me. For the first time in months, I felt free. The weight of her betrayal no longer hung over me. I had taken back control piece by piece, until there was nothing left of her to haunt me. As I drove away, the city lights blurring into the darkness, I felt a sense of satisfaction unlike anything I'd ever known. Revenge wasn't just sweet, it was complete.